Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the workshop. It's fantastic to have you here because today we are going to be making a sickle. And we're throwing it in the forge, we're going to be making up some nice Damascus, and then we're going to be... I seem to have misplaced my forge. And then we'll be using the Pilkington power hammer and... oh dear, I seem to have misplaced that as well. Well, using only a good and basic setup, we're going to make a sickle anyway. So, in the absence of a workshop, what I'm going to do today is to set up a small pit forge in the manner that the Vikings would have used. It was actually rather common to take a small portable anvil and a small portable set of bellows and then to set up a new forge whenever you went into a new farmstead to make tools. And so that's more or less what I'm going to do today. But first, there's a lot of grass here, and grass tends to catch fire, so in the interest of health and safety, we're going to get scything. A Damascus scythe. That would be awesome! Oakley dokley. So, the question that you might be asking is this: how big of a hole is big enough? Now, I've seen some people try to do great big holes that are basically a pit filled with fire and brimstone, and that really isn't what you're going for. A blacksmith in Viking times would have used a hole approximately this deep. We're not talking about a very deep hole. It's going to be very small, very contained, just a dish for the charcoal to sit in, more or less. So, there we go. Just remove the turf from the area we're going to use. Set that aside, and that already is probably big enough. However, I'm going to clear out the brush just a bit more effectively than the scythe could. And that is going to give us an area friendly to fire. Alright, that's one less reason to worry about setting this field on fire. Okie dokie. Now to reposition that hole, which we initially dug and then proceeded to destroy, I'm going to do it again. There. And that is going to be our forge. This is tremendous. Look at that. It's a hole. We're going to use it to make things. You may have noticed on my Japanese box bellows, link here for the video where we made it, that the pipe is actually made out of PVC. Now, PVC is not fireproof, and so we actually need something else to be in direct contact with the fire, and that is where the tuyer comes in. A tuyer, or pronounced a tweer by some, is the pipe through which the air flows into the fire, and it's the part that actually makes contact with the fire. For that, I have a brick with a hole in the middle, and this is what I am going to be using here for air to go into the fire. Next, what I'm going to be doing is building a small wall to protect my bellows from my fire, and then our forge will be ready to go. Now this setup is incredibly basic, but it is in fact good. This setup is incredibly similar to what's called a trench forge, which the Japanese smiths used to create their incredible blades. Now in that design there are actually two walls and then a mound of charcoal built in between the two. Instead of having a second wall here, one is just fine. This is a similar setup to what Viking smiths used and also what smiths in Africa use today. We're just going to use one with an air inlet here, and then this setup is going to allow us to build a mound of charcoal up and against this wall, which will then provide all the heat that we need for our forging. The anvil is going to go over here so that I have a convenient place to work with it. And then using only hand hammering and very, very cheap steel, we're going to make ourselves a threshing hook, a reaping hook, a reaping hook. A threshing hook would be something that threshes. This reaps. A word on steel. Now, the steel available determines much of what you're going to be able to do when you first begin. Now, for edge tools, you want a relatively high carbon content, but not quite so high as what you'll find in cast iron. Now, one way to tell how much carbon is in a piece of steel is based on the spark test, where if it creates very feathery sparks that subdivide as they go out, then you have a knowledge that has some high carbon to it. Now, I don't know exactly what's in this pile, but I do know that rebar has been referred to by a smithing friend of mine as poor man's tool steel. And for a reaping hook, I think this will do. Yeah. So we're back from the forge. This is the sickle up to this point. Now it needs to be ground into shape. Trouble is, I don't have a grinding room. But what I do have is an angle grinder. And so we're going to see how much I can get done with only one tool. I now have the sickle blade roughed out using the angle grinder, and now it's a matter of deciding what to use for a handle. Now, on my scythe, the handle has broken off, and so I now have this useless trinket of wood, and I've decided that it would be poetic to transform this into a good and useful handle for the sickle. The sickle is coming along nicely. The wire wrap is only temporary. The idea is to put a lot of pressure on the handle as it cracked. The epoxy should have remedied that, but the wire is a fail-safe to give enough pressure. It's a way of circling it with pressure on all sides. It's a little bit like having a 360-degree vise. So yeah, gonna unwrap that, and then I think I'll give this a coat of blue spray paint. It's not Daikin blue, but it'll do. There, that's better. As far as that goes, I mean, still shows evidence of the crack. Hand sanding. Made much more easy with these sticks, to which I have attached 220 grit and 1000 grit respectively. I've reached a crossroads. To paint or not to paint? That is the question. This aged look is really, really cool. On the other hand, it would look really cool in blue, which would match my logo, and also be an homage to Daikin blue. I'm going to paint it. The blade is now taped up, and I'm still going to do it. I did it, and it looks awesome. It'll probably look more awesome after the tape is off. I hope you guys enjoyed this process as much as I did. It was fun making an Alec Steele homage video because I love his work. Alec, if you're watching, I love your work. And it was fun to make this sickle. The cool thing about making is it's something that you can start doing right now. You don't have to have top of the line equipment. You can start now and eventually work your way up to the Pilkington power hammers of the world. But rebar, a repurposed handle, and a bit of spray paint with an angle grinder and a pit forge can actually make a halfway decent sickle. If you enjoyed this content, then please hit the like button and subscribe below, and we look forward to seeing you next time.